We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it.
This Turning Point conference, were in the front of out there in front of the conference with anti-Semitic slurs, and the cigar.
I think it's important that every single person that attended that Turning Point, every Republican speak up against the stickers, against the flags that were waved.
You let them in. You let them in and you knew what they were.
Right.
So you are complicit.
But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say.
Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept the View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time.
But this is the most important part. This was right after she was saying, we are run by ABC News. You should trust us, not Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. So she by saying we should trust them because they're double checked by ABC News.
People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC...
And then making the stupidest statement. Like you didn't listen to what I said.
Yeah.
You didn't listen to what the wildlife biologist, and that's only a part of what he said.
I can't
the
believe
other
Joey
part of what he
Behar
said
didn't
was
wait.
there was something before that where he was explaining encounters with giant reptiles.
So apparently Joe Rogan has the most popular podcast on Spotify, and he's repeatedly spread COVID misinformation and invited guests on to do the same.
I agree that Joe Rogan is a horror.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also, listen,
it doesn't make sense to me that a middle-aged woman could be dumb.
When you're worried about losing your job and you're worried about podcasts taking over and who's the source of news, and we said Donald Trump was Hitler, but half the country disagreed with us and he won, and this is fucking great, and Joe Rogan believes in dragons.
I mean, I'm not saying that Joe Rogan should be removed from Spotify. He's got 11 million listeners. He's got a $100 million, contract as of 2020. But I do think as the podcast platform, you have to have some sort of guidelines. How about a disclaimer on his podcast that says,
What happens when a conservative powerhouse and a podcast legend take aim at one of daytime TV's most famous shows? You get a $100 million storm, and it's just getting started. It all began with a few controversial comments aired during the View's discussion on Turning Point USA's Student Summit. What seemed like just another heated segment quickly spiraled into a legal and cultural earthquake. Within days, Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, slapped the show with a $100 million defamation lawsuit, accusing the hosts of dragging innocent students into a narrative they didn't sign up for. But if that wasn't dramatic enough, enter Joe Rogan. The world's most influential podcaster wasted no time tearing into The View with biting commentary, calling out what he sees as a pattern of misjudged hot takes and performative outrage. His takedown wasn't just scathing, it was viral. Millions tuned in as Rogan casually picked apart the segment, even calling some of the hosts ideologically blind and not exactly well-informed.
So, I mean, The View has to be if you average out The View hosts among the dumbest people on television. And so it's like they say the thing that people are thinking, but they say it very directly, so they expose whatever truth. But
I don't think some of them are dumb.
And just like that, daytime drama turned into full-blown public spectacle. On one side, a legal heavyweight move backed by a conservative movement. On the other, a mainstream media juggernaut suddenly playing defense. And in the middle, Joe Rogan doing what he does best, calling it out with no filter and turning the whole thing into a cultural moment. So, what did The View actually say that triggered this domino effect? Why is Charlie Kirk going all in with a 9-figure lawsuit? And how did Joe Rogan's comments throw even more gas on the fire? Stick around, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Because this story isn't just about a lawsuit, it's about media accountability, influence wars, and how fast things can spiral when the wrong people get called out. And trust me, what happened next took everyone by surprise. To really understand how this whole firestorm began, we have to rewind to 2022, Tampa, Florida, where Turning Point USA hosted one of its biggest youth summits yet. Thousands of high school and college students flew in from across the country to attend. The event was positioned as a leadership hub for young conservatives, with speeches, workshops, and appearances by some big political names.
You don't think so?
No, I think Sunny Hosting.
You think it's deliberate?
I think she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on for sure. I don't think Sunny's dumb. But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person.
But outside the venue, things looked very different. A group of fringe protesters, complete with disturbing banners and extreme rhetoric, had gathered. None of them were invited. None of them were part of the event. But the optics were explosive. And that's where The View stepped in. During a Hot Topic segment, a few of the hosts on The View, including Sunny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg, implied that the protesters outside might have been linked to the event inside. The language was vague, but the damage was real. It wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about painting thousands of students, many of them teenagers, as somehow connected to something hateful. And that's what Charlie Kirk took personally. In his own words, he says, "I get attacked all the time. I'm a public figure. But those students, they're 16, 17 years old. They shouldn't have to carry that kind of stigma for something they didn't even do." For him, this wasn't just about image. It was about defending the reputation of thousands of young people.
And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked and half baked, and you went on stage with it and it's nothing.
Just
there.
go for it. Yeah,
there's nothing there. Sometimes.
Who now found their names floating around social media in a cloud of controversy they never signed up for. Soon after, Turning Point's legal team fired off a cease and desist letter to ABC and The View, demanding a retraction. The show did air a short apology, but many felt it was too little, too late. The damage had already been done, and Kirk wasn't letting it slide. This wasn't just a media misstep, it was the spark that lit the fuse on a much bigger war. One that would eventually pull in lawyers, headlines, and even Joe Rogan. But that was just the beginning. Because what happened next turned this TV controversy into a legal battlefield, with a 9-figure price tag attached. The apology came and went, but for Charlie Kirk, a quick "my bad" on live TV wasn't going to cut it. Not when thousands of students felt branded by association. Not when a national audience heard it. That's when he dropped the hammer. In May 2025, Kirk made it official. A $100 million defamation lawsuit filed against The View, its parent company ABC, and specifically host Sunny Hostin. The lawsuit claims that the show's remarks falsely tied his student event to fringe hate groups, causing serious reputational harm not just to him, but to the students who attended. Here's the kicker: this isn't a publicity stunt. Kirk's legal team is stacked with high-powered attorneys who specialize in defamation and media law. They're coming in strong, arguing that the hosts didn't just make a mistake, they made a reckless public claim without verifying the facts. And when you're on national television with millions watching, that matters. The complaint outlines how the show's statements could follow these students for years. It points to real-world consequences, like students being harassed online, misrepresented in job searches, and even facing backlash from peers who believed what they heard on The View.
Now we begin with a shocking apology just a short time ago from the ladies of The View to Turning Point USA. A war of words broke out after the conservative group was rallying the next generation of voters at its youth summit in Tampa, Florida this weekend.
In Kirk's words, the lawsuit is a statement, not just a legal challenge. It's about holding mainstream media accountable for what he calls lazy narratives and careless smears. And while some see it as a bold move, others see it as a warning shot to any outlet that crosses the line under the guise of opinion. But it's not just about the money. The $100 million is a serious number. It's about making the case that defamation isn't free, that slandering people, even indirectly, can come with real-world consequences, especially when those people are kids. And here's where things get even more unpredictable. Just when the lawsuit was making headlines, Joe Rogan jumped into the ring, not as a lawyer, not as a witness, but as a commentator with one of the biggest microphones in the world. What he said would ignite the internet. If there's one person who can turn a lawsuit into a viral cultural moment, it's Joe Rogan. Within days of Charlie Kirk filing that $100 million lawsuit, Rogan lit up his podcast mic and let it fly. He didn't just comment, he torched The View hosts in a segment that quickly exploded across YouTube, X, Reddit, and TikTok. Calling some of the statements half-baked and ideologically blind, Rogan took direct aim at the show's most recognizable voices. Whoopi Goldberg? He didn't hold back, saying what she said made no sense and was like trying to riff on a comedy bit without any punchline. He compared the show's logic to a poorly rehearsed stand-up act that just falls flat. And while that might sound harsh, it's Rogan's brand. Brutally honest, sharply sarcastic.
And the liberal panel just couldn't help themselves. The group sent a scathing cease and desist letter after hosts on The View suggested that Turning Point had embraced who showed up.
Delivered in that casual, just between us tone that's made him one of the most influential podcasters in the world. He didn't stop at just mocking the segment. He went for the format itself. He pointed out how The View often brings in token conservative guests, only to talk over them. He criticized the panel for being trapped in their own ideological bubble, calling it a bizarre show where nobody seems to read anything before they speak. But here's why this hit harder than your average podcast commentary. Joe Rogan isn't just a guy with opinions, he's a media powerhouse. His episodes regularly pull in 10 to 12 million listeners, dwarfing The View's daytime reach. When Rogan speaks, he shifts narratives. The segment caught fire online, with clips titled "Joe Rogan Destroys the View" and Podcast King Rex daytime drama racking up views in the millions. Audiences, especially younger viewers, saw Rogan's takedown as a rare moment where someone finally pushed back on legacy media. And unlike The View, which is tied to a network and corporate talking points, Rogan has the freedom to say what mainstream anchors won't. That freedom makes his critiques hit different. It makes them stick. And just like that, what started as a TV segment turned into a national conversation about credibility, power, and accountability. But the fallout from Rogan's roast didn't just stay online. It started raising questions inside media circles, and whispers of what might happen next. What started as a heated TV segment has now turned into something much bigger.
Do you see what Whoopi Goldberg said?
What'd she say?
Whoopi Goldberg said that Biden could arrest all the Republicans and put them in jail.
A full-blown media war. And at the heart of it is a high-stakes game of reputation, ratings, and power. Let's break it down. On one side, you have The View, a long-running talk show with a massive daytime following and the full backing of ABC and Disney. It's built a brand on outspoken commentary and hot-button conversations. But that also means every misstep is broadcast to millions, and every word carries legal weight. On the other side, Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA, a conservative movement with deep pockets, a loyal youth following, and a network of influencers ready to amplify any backlash. Kirk's lawsuit isn't just a legal move, it's a rallying cry. It's a message to his audience. See, the media's after us, and we're fighting back. And right in the middle, Joe Rogan, arguably the most influential independent media voice in the world. He doesn't answer to advertisers, producers, or boardrooms. His commentary comes straight from the source, unfiltered and unapologetic. That's why his roast of The View hit harder than any press release or Twitter thread could. But here's where it gets even more interesting. In the world of media, attention is currency. The View may have legacy reach, but Rogan has the algorithm on his side. While daytime TV ratings have plateaued or declined in recent years, Rogan's podcast continues to dominate streaming charts. His content isn't tied to a 10 a.m. time slot, it's everywhere, all the time, always trending. The result? A major shift in power dynamics. For years, traditional networks held the microphone, but now one viral Rogan clip can rival an entire week's worth of cable segments, and that terrifies legacy outlets.
You just need to see how unhinged this kind of thinking is. Well, you know what Joe Biden could do? Joe Biden, you have to see it, because it's so
on TV,
crazy.
she said
on television.
It's no longer just about who gets to talk. It's about who people believe, who they trust. And when viewers see Rogan calling out media double standards with humor and confidence, they listen, they repost, they quote. Suddenly, The View isn't just dealing with a legal problem, they're fighting a credibility crisis. One that's being broadcast to millions on platforms they don't control. But that's just the media side. behind the scenes, things were quietly heating up in another way. Because if this lawsuit really moves forward, what gets exposed could be even more damaging than the original segment. Now, here's where things get messy. When a lawsuit of this size gets filed, especially one involving defamation, it doesn't just stay in the headlines. It creeps into boardrooms, legal departments, and internal emails. Because once a case like this enters the discovery phase, all bets are off. What is discovery? It's the part of a lawsuit where both sides gather evidence. That means emails, texts, memos, raw footage, basically anything that could prove who said what, who approved it, and whether the statements were reckless or deliberate. And for a show like The View, backed by a media giant like ABC, that's a nightmare scenario. Insiders are already speculating that the show's legal team is scrambling, not just to defend what was said on air, but to control what might get out next.
You know, just let's look at a scenario where the Supreme Court says, yes, he has all those rights. He is immune from everything.
Yeah.
You know what Joe Biden could do since he is presently president?
What?
Whoa. He could throw every Republican in jail.
Because if this case moves forward, there's a very real chance we could see unaired footage, off-camera commentary, or producer notes that paint a different picture entirely. And it's not just about legal risk, it's about brand damage. ABC doesn't want its name dragged into months of coverage about lawsuits, apologies, and credibility questions. It's bad for ratings, it's worse for advertisers, and it puts pressure on the network to consider its options, like settling quickly, issuing another apology, or even quietly disciplining someone behind the scenes. But Kirk's side isn't playing for silence. They want accountability. And if the lawsuit survives early dismissal attempts, we could see public depositions, testimonies under oath, and real-time updates that fuel this story for months. Even worse for The View, all of this is unfolding in the age of viral receipts. If just one email or behind-the-scenes clip leaks, it's not just courtroom evidence, it's instant content for podcasts, reaction videos, and meme accounts. Joe Rogan hinted at this exact kind of unraveling when he mocked the show for being ideologically locked and disconnected from reality. If anything, the lawsuit proves his point, because while the hosts may have moved on to their next segment, the internet hasn't, and neither has Kirk. What started as a throwaway comment could soon explode into a full-blown PR crisis, with every twist playing out in public. But if you think the hosts are the only ones under fire, you're in for a surprise. This isn't just a squabble between a talk show and a conservative activist. It's a mirror to the deeper identity crisis happening in media and in culture as a whole. On one hand, The View positions itself as a space for strong, empowered voices.
Welcome back. You know, in Monday's conversation about Turning Point USA, I put the young people at the conference in the same category as the protesters outside.
An arena where different perspectives collide. But critics argue it's become more of an echo chamber than a debate stage, one where certain narratives get greenlit while opposing views are cut off or talked over. Joe Rogan didn't just call them out for a single misstep, he called out the pattern. The token conservative co-hosts, the carefully shaped outrage, the habit of dropping bold claims and walking them back later when pressure mounts. To Rogan, it's not just frustrating, it's performative, a kind of outrage theater dressed up as news. Then there's Charlie Kirk, framing the lawsuit as a battle for accountability, especially in how the media talks about young people. He's made it clear, this isn't about punishing a show, it's about drawing a line in the sand, a signal to the wider media that if you want to editorialize about people, you better be ready to prove your claims. But underneath it all is something even bigger, a culture shift around who gets to hold the mic. Traditional shows like The View are built on legacy power, major networks, set schedules, and corporate backing. But Rogan, he represents the new media class. Podcasts, YouTube, independent voices with massive reach and zero filters. And that's why this battle hits so hard. It's not just about facts versus fiction. It's about who the public trusts, who they turn to when the noise gets loud.
And I don't like it when people make assumptions about me. And it's not any better when I make assumptions about other people, which I did. So, my bad. I'm sorry.
And right now, a growing portion of that public is choosing podcasts over panel shows, authenticity over polish, and blunt honesty over media scripts. The View still has its loyal audience, but this lawsuit and Rogan's mockery have cracked something deeper, the illusion that legacy media can talk without consequence. the cultural crossfire is real. And as more people question what's truth and what's just TV, the balance of power keeps shifting faster than ever. And if you think the drama ends here, just wait, because the next twist might be the most unpredictable one yet. So, where does this all go? Right now, The View is facing a defamation lawsuit worth $100 million, a credibility check from the internet's biggest voice, and mounting pressure to clean up a mess that started with a few offhanded remarks. Charlie Kirk isn't backing down. Joe Rogan's not backing off. And the internet, it's still watching. Behind the scenes, you can bet ABC's legal and PR teams are in overdrive, deciding whether to fight this in court, quietly settle, or brace for more fallout if Discovery pulls back the curtain even further. For a show that built its brand on bold opinions, this could be its most uncomfortable moment yet. But for audiences, this story is more than just drama. It's a reminder that words matter, that media giants can be challenged, and that sometimes the loudest mic isn't in a studio, it's on a podcast. Whether or not The View survives this storm intact is still up in the air, but one thing's for sure. This isn't just a daytime dust-up anymore. It's a full-blown culture clash. And with Rogan turning up the volume and Kirk lawyering up, the next chapter could change the rules of the game for good. So keep your eyes on this one. Because whether it ends in a courtroom, on a podcast, or back on national TV, this battle isn't just about a moment. It's about momentum. And it's only just begun.